Hey,
Hey,
how are you?
I'm good. How are you, Chiizii?
I'm good.
How's your day been so far?
It's been all right, just a bit
Oh,
of
you
a
got your tea
Sunday.
too?
Yes, girl. Yes,
I got
honey.
my tea.
hmm
Yeah, same. I've just been chilling. I had a slow morning. I burnt some sage a bit earlier today, had breakfast.
That's cute. I love it.
I'm gonna just wait for a few people to join,
Perfect.
and then we'll get started with our conversation. I'm looking forward to it.
Me too. What tea are you drinking?
Um, it's the pucker tea, the mint matcha.
Okay, that sounds
And
nice.
green one. They do these like collections. So this one had like ginseng, like a lemon one, wonderberry, like all like different green teas. I really like that tea.
Okay.
I want to get more into loose leaf though. I enjoy your
Yeah.
we'll talk about it a little bit. But when you do your morning post with your tea
Yeah.
of the day,
Uh-huh.
I really enjoy it. I
Oh,
enjoy
thank
seeing this
you.
when I wake up in the morning. Okay. Let's say if we give it till maybe another minute
Yeah.
or two. And
It's
then we'll
still
get
Sunday.
started.
Still rising up, as it
Mm-hmm.
say.
Slow Sundays,
Mm-hmm.
self-care Sundays. How are you feeling?
I feel fine. I feel okay.
Mm.
I feel decent. That's the
Yeah,
word. I feel decent right now.
yeah. Have you, I guess with the whole, how are you feeling about like, I guess lockdown at this point now? It's about
Mm,
4 months in.
I think because it's funny because I'm a very outgoing person and I
Mm.
like to go out and do a lot of things as well. But I think I'm I'm very much somebody that could stay in the house for long periods of time.
Right.
And that's something that I've developed not even by choice, but because of circumstance. But
Right.
I kind of know how to navigate that. So being inside for this long, there are still some things I'm relearning actually,
Mm.
but so far it hasn't been the 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 prospect of being inside hasn't been bad. Obviously, morning, my cousin just joined.
Morning.
Hi. Um, but I'm more concerned about like obviously the issues of lockdown that are affecting people, just about everybody that
Yeah.
is um affecting everybody's welfare essentially
Mm.
and rights and wellness. So I think that's it. I wouldn't say like I know a lot of people have been saying that this lockdown has been a blessing in disguise. I don't know if I want to use that term because it truly has not been a blessing for a lot of people. And it's been really difficult for a lot of people. So yeah, how are you
Yeah.
feeling about lockdown?
I agree with you with the phrasing of it being a blessing in disguise because there's a lot of privilege in being able to say that.
Mm,
I think personally, it's given me a lot of time to, I guess, pause, reflect. Um, so personally, yeah, it's been interesting. I think it's kind of up and down, you
mm,
know. Um, but it's been I think a lot of processing for me. That's how the like phrase I'd kind of use to summarize the whole period. I feel like I've been processing a lot of things, so not really
yeah,
had many words to articulate. Um, yeah, exactly how I feel about it on a
mm.
personal level. Hi, Mutsa.
Hi,
Um,
everybody that just
hey, Jules. Hey,
joined.
everybody.
I
But
hope
yeah,
everybody has a cup of tea or something to drink. Like, stay hydrated today, okay?
get comfortable. But yeah, I agree with you in terms of just being concerned about the wellness of a number of people who, well, what we always talk about with is like throughout this call is like who don't benefit from this world, from the system.
Mm,
And so when a crisis like this happens, um, they bear the brunt of that, you know? So, yeah.
mm.
But to introduce the conversation, I think we can get started now. Firstly, thank you for joining. And today we're going to be talking about wellness, but in the context of, I think a lot of your work, what you create as an artist, but also talking about culture, and also linking that to astrology, which is a lot of what you talk about, and reference in, like, on your social media and your work. Language, the language that we use to speak about our health, which like links it in politics of health as well. So literally what you were just saying before, about privilege, and that when we speak about self-care, when we speak about wellness, your position in the world has an effect on how you're able to access tools to support your wellness. And also, but we'll talk about this more, but also just about the concept of embodiment. Yeah. And when you are your body and how the signifiers of your body affect the way that you're able to move into the world. And so how that affects your journey of wellness and being empowered with knowledge, but then also finding alignment within yourself and understanding what self-care means and looks like to you. So to start, I think there was a quote which we've used a couple of times throughout this series, but I think I really like repetition. I think there's a lot of power in repetition, whether it's like in the concept of like a mantra, or if like, you know, Solange, the Things I Imagine song, when that came out, and everyone was like, why does she keep repeating this like one line? And I think she spoke about it and she was saying it's that thing of like meditation, manifesting, like repeating a mantra and affirming something into your life. And I think for me, that's been something that's really essential to my journey of like wellness, but also spirituality. It's meditating on the things that I want to bring into fruition in my life, and constantly reminding myself and bringing myself back to the core of what my values are, what my center is. So this quote is by Audre Lorde. It's from her 1988 essay collection, Burst of Light. And it's, caring for myself is not self-indulgence, it's a self-expression, and that is an act of political warfare. And so my question to you to start off with is this something that you resonate with? And if so, then why? And what does that mean to you personally to understand self-care as an act of liberation?
Okay, first I'm going to say, because I'm just looking at the comments as well, if you're getting a cup of tea, let us know what you're drinking, or infused water, let us know what you're drinking. But to answer the question, yes, I do resonate with that quote. I think it's it's so funny, like how things make sense when you get older. You know, like growing up, I would get really okay, so growing up obviously in a Nigerian household, routine is something that like parents, or my parents specifically, made very important. Like, before you go to school, make your bed. And I would always be like, what's the I'm literally gonna sleep in this bed when I come home. Like, why do I need to make my bed before I go? Okay, lemon ginger herbal tea. Okay, we're drinking. This is lemongrass and green tea. Cheers. So yeah, I think like my parents also always used to be like, make your bed before you go to school, before you leave the school start. When you come back, it's done already. And like, have your clothes out the morning before, have them ironed, like have everything that you need to do be done before the day starts. And I think that resonates with the quote, because it's like, if you don't take care of yourself, then what else, or what comes before you? You know what I mean? Like, why wouldn't you take care of yourself first? And then you think about the history of the world that we're living in, and the fact that through colonization, globalization, and westernization, a lot of Black people, a lot of non-white people, but specifically Black people, African people, people in the African diaspora, have quite literally not been able to take care of themselves, as in like punished when they're taking care of themselves. It's like self-care versus death in a lot of instances. So I think it's very important to take care of yourself, especially if you're a Black woman, a Black African woman, a Black queer woman, a Black disabled woman, a Black immigrant, because the levels of society, community, and then government as a whole that are counting on you to not take care of yourself, that are counting that when you ask for help to take care of yourself, they're giving you the opposite of help, are just like incredibly huge, and they're way too strong. So long story short, I do agree with that quote.
Yeah, yeah. I think you've put that so succinctly. And so for you personally, was there a pivotal moment in your time or point where I guess you realized the importance of that care in your own life and it became a priority?
Yeah, I think when I actually moved out of my parents' house and I went to university, I think that's when I started to understand the importance of self-care and like taking care of yourself. Because it's one thing to live in a house with other people where it's a chore or a job or a duty and somebody's telling you to do it. It's another thing when you live by yourself and then you now have the choice to do it or not, and what that actually looks like. So for me, it actually, the way that I take care of myself now, I actually was not doing that at all when I first moved from New York to London. I was very much just like, I used to think that like investing in my space was a waste of money, number one, because I was like, I'm only gonna live in this flat for 1 year. Why am I buying all this stuff from IKEA or wherever I'm getting it from and making my flat look nice? Why am I investing in like all of these teas and all this? I just was like, why would I possibly do that when my focus is university? The money and the time and the energy that I would spend on that, I should be spending on art supplies and what I'm doing in class and how high my grade is and how far I'm going to progress. That was what I was thinking. So I think it wasn't until my final year of university, like I was still living in accommodation and I requested for the best building in the accommodation, and I got it. And when I first moved into that flat, she doesn't even have, I don't think she has Instagram anymore, but when I first moved into that flat, there was another girl in there and her name was Evie. And she was so serious about making her space so well put together, comfortable, organized, like everything. She was just, she didn't waste any time. Like she made the bath, just things that I didn't even consider. She made the bathroom look a whole different space, her room a whole different space, and it was not a joke to her. And I was like, why have I not been doing this entire time? Like, why have I not been putting that much? Because I was putting that energy into like dating, relationships, and uni and friends, but I wasn't really putting that same artistic practice into my space, or that same drive or that energy into my space. So I would say that the final year of university during my bachelor's degree was when I started taking my personal care more seriously, which is very tied to how my home looks like and what my space actually looks like, and making like it's very much a reflection of what's going on internally and how I feel.
So what would you like say when you made that in your third year and you were like, okay, I'm going to invest in my space, I'm going to take this seriously, I'm going to make my space a reflection of like almost make it a sanctuary, essentially, that idea of like home, a place of peace. What changes did you notice in yourself in terms of how that ricocheted in other areas of life? Because even what you were saying earlier about what like you would be told that growing up in terms of like making your bed, one thing that I always remember that my dad would say to me growing up is that like it would be little things like me washing the dishes, and if I didn't wash a particular pot really well, he would be like, that pot represents your ethic, the way that you go about things in other areas of life. So he was like, when you wash the dishes, you do the dishes to your best of your capability, because then when you're at school, you do that to the best of your capability. When you make your bed, you do that to the best of your capability, because that is a pattern of behavior that then applies to all areas of your life, because it's an attitude, it's a practice, it's a way of living. So changing your space to align with the way that you wanted to live, how did that then have an effect on all the other areas of your life?
Somebody just asked a question. Yeah, I became a vegan, I want to say 2 or 3 years before that. And then to answer your question, Charisse, it's the same thing that you're saying. Like, my dad always says this thing about, like, it's not that he doesn't like deals or sales, but my dad is very much like, if you can buy it and it's more expensive, but it's of quality and it will last longer, just buy the thing. Just buy it and move on. So for me, like, I was like, okay, if I have to put a hierarchy of what's most important and what I can spend the most money on, it actually is me, because without me, everything else that I'm doing is not going to be there. So I started spending, not like frivolously, but just making sure that things were of quality, like not trying to be so sale and like money minded when buying things, and more about like, is it actually going to make me comfortable? Is it good for my health? And then that turned into my work. So like, especially now, if it's not going to be of quality, there's no point in putting it out, and there's no point in doing that. And that was really that carried all the way to my master's. So when I did my MA degree show, and I was like, I kept saying the thing came back again. It kept saying like, do you really need this big piece of wood? Can you afford it? How are you going to carry it from your house to the studio? How are you going to do this? The idea that you have, can you really afford to do that? And then I was saying to myself, I've actually taken out a loan to do this master's. If I don't do it now, then when? And if it's not worth it now, then when? And because I practice that with my own self, like, if I'm going out to eat food, I don't like eating trash. I don't like eating junk, because I will wake up the next morning, my nose will be blocked, and I will not feel well. So there's no point. If I'm gonna go and like buy, a piece of technology that I need for everyday use, I might as well go and buy the best one, so that I'm not buying another one in 3 months' time because it's broken. So that has directly manifested in the people that I have relationships with. I'm not friends with people who mistreat me, and I give grace to people, but there comes a time where I'm just like, okay, this is not for me. It comes out in the way that I do work. So if it means that I have to put a little bit more energy, effort, or money, or resources, or strategize a plan to make my ideas like come to life, then I need to do that. It's just like, I just think of it as like, I have this one life. I might as well actually take care of myself and take care of the things that I put any amount of effort towards.
And when you speak about that self-awareness, so that you said, for example, if you would eat junk food, you'd wake up in the morning and you could feel it. Or if somebody is in your space and they're negatively affecting your space, you can feel it. And like that in itself, we'll speak more about it, but is a practice. There's a level of like awareness of like being in tune with yourself that you have to notice how things are adversely affecting you. And you spoke earlier about how as people, when we find ourselves in survival mode, it's like to take care of yourself is a luxury. And when you're in that survival mode, the time to be still or aware enough to notice that there are X amount of things that are having effect on your body, on the way you're able to function, on the way you're able to connect, on the way that you're able to relate. Was that awareness something that, can you remember a point where you started to develop it, or when you consciously were like, okay, I really need to be aware of what I'm consuming in order to, like, I guess, in order to better care for myself? Or was that an awareness that you always had? Like, you always had that relationship with food? You always had that relationship with...
No, absolutely not.
People?
Absolutely not. It's so funny, because if you met childhood me, like anything that had sugar, she would eat. Anything that was healthy, she was not going near or towards. Like, it was just not like that. My relationship with my body, I think, so when I first moved to London, like almost immediately I got into a relationship that was just very like intense, tumultuous. It was a lot, girl. It was a lot, honey. And when I broke up with that person, that's when I actually started. That's when I had the time to start listening to what was going on with my body. Because before I was too worried about not pissing the person off and making sure that we're still together. I wasn't even focusing on my physical self. But when I broke up with that person, the anxiety and the depression that I was having, it was like, if you're not gonna listen, if you don't, those who don't hear must feel. That's really what it was. So during that time, my mom realized that I was like extremely stressed out. She put me into therapy. So I went home that summer from uni, and she realized that, like, she was like, this is not how this is. I've never seen you like this in my life. So my mom put me into therapy, and then that's when, like, I didn't have a choice. Like, I couldn't laugh, I couldn't eat, I couldn't sleep. So I didn't have a choice but to listen to what my body was going through. And then when I started going to therapy, I started to like notice patterns a little bit more. So I was like, okay, when I feel upset with somebody, it usually shows up in my stomach and in my chest. Those are the two places that it shows up the most. And then when I have an issue with food, and to also like go back on that. So I became a vegan when I was in that relationship that was tumultuous, and that started like explaining little bits of things. So as a child, I had an allergy to peanuts, shellfish, and egg, and then I got over the allergy of egg and shellfish. But when I cut out all animal products for a week, and I had calamari that I usually had like for a while, my face broke out within an hour. So I was like, okay, I probably should not be eating this. So I became a vegetarian, and I was eating a lot of dairy, a lot of milk, a lot of cheese, more than I usually was. And my skin started breaking out again, and my bowel systems were horrible. So my mom took me to a holistic doctor to get an allergy test. And the reason why she did that was because my baby brother, has a severe allergy to things that all Black people have allergies to. But his just came out like in a very present way. So she went to the doctors and was trying to get, help. They gave my baby brother steroid cream, which obviously did not help. She was like, she had enough of it, so she went to go get a holistic allergy test done. I got the same allergy test done, and it was like, girl, you're allergic to wheat, gluten, dairy, milk, egg, cheese. So hang it up. Just hang it up. Right. So I changed my diet, and I started listening more to my body. Broke up with the person that was not good for me, and started listening to my body even more. So now I'm very much in tune with, I'm more in tune now, because sometimes, like, I can feel when something is going to be wrong before it happens. Sometimes I can see behavior coming towards my way before it happens, and it usually shows up in my stomach still. So
that's really firstly, I just want to say that is incredible, like, in terms of your mom being the one that like put you in therapy, and also took you to the holistic like I did that to do the allergy test. That's incredible.
In it.
And it's interesting that you speak. It's almost like that breakup kickstarted like a process of transformation for you. And I think one of the things that I've been really interested in is just the idea of like rebirth and like evolution. That when we experience like endings in our lives, like last week we were talking about grief, and the grief that you experience also when you break up with somebody, like that transition of what's being connected and then no longer connected, and when you have to reconfigure self, it's like that is a process where, yeah, I think it's really interesting that you say you sort of kickstart that journey in terms of like getting closer to, I guess, who you like, self-identifying and self-actualizing as well. So I'm going to reference a little bit throughout the conversation some of like your Instagram captions. So I said it earlier that I really like enjoy and appreciate and value your social media presence, just in terms of the insights that you share. Oh, you're welcome. In terms of the insights that you share, but also just documenting like things in terms of like lifestyle, what you're reading, what you're listening to, what you're eating, and how that kind of, because for me, I was saying to my friend yesterday, just how you were saying even just a second ago, like how important the people in your life are, but also the people that you even follow on Instagram, like in terms of what you engage and how you learn from that, and you can take one thing and like add that to your life. Like I think I messaged you at one point when I started putting lime and tangerine in my water, and I was like, yeah, I took that for you, Chiizii. And I love that because we can all teach each other and like
Yeah.
learn things, and you see one person doing something and then you add that to your part. But this particular caption, I think, is relevant to the conversation that we're having. And you'd written about how your astrological placements are linked to you being called to be an artist, or a creative person. And you're saying they're linked to spirituality, healing, and artistry being intertwined for a person, where they all lead to each other, art leading to healing, leading to spiritual growth, and vice versa. So I like that a lot because of what it says about not only wellness from a like holistic perspective, but also how the mind, the body, and the spirit all like relate and work in tandem with each other in order to be in a place of wellness. So I just wanted you to expand on a little bit more about what you meant by that.
Okay, where do I start? Hold on. Okay, so in my specific chart, I see some of my I have this like weekly astro group thing that I do, and I see one of the members in there. Hey, Adiola, what's poppin', baby?
Hello, everyone.
But yeah, so like in my chart, I have I don't think I put that in the caption, but I have a grand water trine, right? And in astrology, a grand water trine represents, you can have any trine, grand earth, fire, water, or air. I have a grand water trine, which represents like a very strong, innate talent that's linked to spirituality and understanding emotions and feelings extremely strongly. Am I speaking English correctly? But yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. And I also have Venus in Aquarius, and Venus is like the planet of design, style, aesthetic, art, love, relations. Aquarius is the sign of innovation, progression, breaking the rules, being a rebel, breaking boundaries, acceptance past tolerance. Very like, I'm very, even though Aquarius is an air sign, it is very much in tune with like the occult and spiritual knowledge and like trend forecasting, seeing things like 10 steps ahead. So my chart is basically saying that the way for me to, the best way for me to have a spiritual practice is through the work that I do, and that it's not one or the other. They're just the same thing. Like there really isn't any difference between the two. And I really like that a lot, because the more that I learned about my chart and the more that I studied my culture, the more I could see that it was very much like on purpose, you know, very much destined for me to have the personality and the characteristics that I have. Because in Igbo culture, like everything, pre-colonial Igbo culture specifically, everything is linked together. There's no such thing as like your art is separate from the art that people make is about spirituality and life and food and fun and relationships, which is all intertwined to the religious and spiritual practice, which is all intertwined to nature, which is all intertwined. So there really is no difference between any of them. And I don't know if I'm answering your question, but
Yeah.
okay. But yeah,
Yeah.
I just think that for me specifically, it's made me be more understanding of what I create and why I see things, because it's not, you know, there's some art that is meant to just be pretty, and I think it has its place. Like there are some artists that make art just for aesthetic purposes, just so that it looks beautiful, just so people have something to walk past and, you know, it inspires some type of beauty. My work is not meant to do that. And the people who make work that have that type of work, there's nothing wrong with that either. It serves its purpose. So there's times where you just need to see something beautiful. But what I've realized is that my work is not meant to do that. So when it's misunderstood, especially in like when I was in uni, and especially during my BA, when the majority of my tutor, I think every single last tutor I had was white. actually, but one of my technicians was not. But the majority of my tutors did not understand my work. They didn't understand the reference. They didn't understand the gravity of the work either, why it was so important. And the things that they were telling me to push my work to be like, I was like, what the fuck is this? I was like, why would you tell me to do that? Like, you're only telling me to do that because you don't get it. Like, you don't actually get how serious and how important this thing is. So now, sometimes when I personally compare my work to other people's, I have to tell myself to stop, because that's not the purpose of why I'm doing what I'm doing. It's not meant to look like somebody else's. It's spiritual work. So it's not, I don't know who I think I am trying to make my work look like somebody else. And when somebody else doesn't understand my work or doesn't like it, I'm also like, okay, well, I don't know who you think you are trying to tell me about my work that has nothing to do with you, that is very spiritually inclined.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, okay, you don't like it, and then next, but it's just not for you, babe. That's just what it is.
So we got 2 comments. Rachel Isabel says, agreed, that's what I've discovered about my practice too.
Hi, Rachel.
And I think firmly says capitalism means that we separate our inner selves from what we do.
Yeah.
Which is true. It's like, especially right now with the way that social media facilitates the practice of art, it's this thing of branding and commodifying yourself.
It's scary.
And
it's
needing to, scary. Oh, hi, Mom. My mom's just joined.
Hi.
But yeah, it's this thing of needing, like figuring out how you almost make a pocketable, like bite-sized version of your practice in order to channel it through this like social medium. So I think what I wanted to ask as well on the topic of astrology is how that came to be like of prevalence in your life. And then I think also when you touched on it a little bit when you're speaking about your culture, like Igbo culture, do you see them as connected? Like, do you see them as separate things? Like, where did you learn about astrology? And because sometimes it's one of those things where some might say it's like it's un-African, you know, like this is not what we believe in, like, especially I know that's probably something that could be said. So what was the relationship between the two for you?
Okay, so initially when I first started learning about astrology, it was when I was dating that person that wasn't good for me. That's when I started learning about it. And I started seeing like, okay, girl, let me tell you what really happened. So basically that person was a Scorpio, innit? And during that time, I just kept meeting Scorpios and I wasn't getting along with them. And then it got to the point where I could meet somebody who was a Scorpio and know it before I even knew their name. It was like, it was very much that. So then I was like, okay, let me just keep reading this thing and studying it and learning more about it. And then I realized that astrology is not as surface level as like mainstream media or communication would have you think. And that's how I started. Through that, I just started like going deeper and deeper because I was like, well, a lot of this stuff makes sense. A lot of it is useful. And a lot of it is putting language to feelings that I couldn't articulate before, or parts of myself that I thought I was wrong for. And then in terms of how it relates to Igbo culture, honestly, I think it's fair enough if somebody calls it un-African. I think Western astrology is derived from Greek mythology. So it makes sense if somebody says this is not particularly African. But I mean, even when you start looking at Greek mythology, you can find that a lot of what they studied and believed in was taken from a lot of African practices. Specifically for me, being Igbo and being from Onitsha, I've started learning about traditional Onitsha beliefs and spiritual practices, because I do think that there should be a point where it's like, if I'm so invested in my culture and I love astrology this much, surely I can try or I can do more to learn about the spiritual practices that my ancestors had, in the same way that I'm studying astrology. The only difference is that Ordinani is not as recorded as Greek mythology and astrology is. So that's the only problem. But I think, I don't know, in terms of how it relates to my culture, it's been a tool that I've used to understand my culture more. It's been a tool that I've used to understand myself more. So I don't particularly worship astrology. It's not anything that I think is, it's like a spiritual science, but it's not something that like rules me, if that makes sense. It's something that I use for like cycles. It's something that I take into account, something that I use for like guiding and stuff like that. It's almost like, you know, like if how scientists look at charts and graphs and all those things, it doesn't mean that everything you see on the graph and the chart will come to pass, or that it has to be exact. It just means that there's a guide or a tool that you can use to kind of understand yourself and other people and like the cycles of the world.
Yeah. What would you say, like, on that point, is your relationship to spirituality? For example, 2 weeks ago when I was speaking to Liv, I was kind of explaining to her that I'm in a process of figuring out how I kind of define my relationship to spirituality, and that you can find a number of these tools that you connect with. And if we understand like self, like your spirit as the source, and that if you're in tune and you can trust your intuition, that you'll know what's right for you when you're like taking part in it, and when it's not, you'll also know that it's not right for you. So we were speaking, for example, about like, I really enjoy yoga. Or if it's like meditation, if it's astrology, if it's that you're reading about ancient or pre-colonial spiritual practices in wherever your like homeland or native country is, how do you kind of position those in your life in terms of like, so you're describing them as guidance?
I describe them as tools. Okay, so this is also something I really like about my native culture. So in pre-colonial times, so obviously my name is Chiizii. In pre-colonial times, Chi represents your personal spiritual guide. Every single person has their own Chi. And if 100 people are telling you to do something and your Chi says no, and you told those people that your Chi said no, they're gonna have to just listen to that, because it is what it is. Like your specific spirit told you it's not gonna run. So I think for me, the way that I look at spirituality is that I definitely believe in God. As I've gotten older, I think the characteristics that I've been taught that God has and what God looks like may not be the truth or accurate. I look at religion in general as a tool. And I think that if every single person has their own chi, or has their own spirit, or has their own personhood, that it makes sense that not everybody believes in the same thing, because God, or, you know, whatever you believe in would show up to you in the way that would best meet you. Like there's no way for everybody to possibly believe in the same thing. We don't eat the same food. We don't all speak the same language. We don't even have all the same interests. So your God is going to show up to you in, it could be through astrology, could be through Christianity, Islam, music, art. It could be a mixture of all of those things. You know what I mean? So I think that everything that we use is a tool. And I think that God is ultimately like the biggest and the highest, you know, entity. And God can choose to do whatever God wants to do. Now, what good God looks like and the rules that God made, I don't particularly know. Because I think it's very ego-based to say that I know exactly what God wants from the world, and what God wants from every single person on this planet. And yeah, I'm sure that God said this, and no, I'm not. Like, I can't even tell you what the weather's going to be like tomorrow, so that's not possible. So I think in terms of like astrology and spirituality, I see it as a tool. I see all beliefs as a tool to just communicate with God, essentially.
Right, I hear you. And then finally, for now, on the point of astrology, do you consider it as a practice of well-being? Like, how does it link to your practices of wellness?
I think that once you start to learn what a chart means and what placements mean, you can use it for betterment. And you can use it for betterment in how you relate to other people, but also in how to almost like map out your life, or how you engage with yourself. So there's quite literally like placements in astrology that are linked to, like Venus, for example, that's linked to like desire and love and wants. And then there's Mars that's linked to the action and drive and competition that you use to get those things. And then there's Jupiter that rules over expansion and blessings and wisdom, spirituality, and travel. So there's a house and a planet for all of those things that can help you map out what works best for you. So it can help you map out your specific routine and understand that, okay, everybody else might be following this routine, but my chart specifically said that I should not do that, so I'm probably not going to do that. So yeah, that's what I would say.
When you just said that, I just had this click moment of the significance of when people say women are from Venus and men are from Mars.
Yeah.
Because you just said what Venus and Mars represents. I'm like, oh, okay, that's what is meant by that. Okay, cool. So I guess the next thing will be to speak about what are the actual practices, like rituals of well-being that you have in your life, and how you came to learn of them and why they're important to you. And so the first one I wanted to start with is food and nutrition, because you just finished your master's in April. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And you did your thesis on food and culture, like Igbo food and culture. And so you named the collection Nibu, which means food is medicine. And I wanted to ask you what that phrase means to you and why you chose it as the title for the work.
I honestly don't even remember why I don't even remember why I chose doing that project specifically. What I do remember though is that during the time when I applied for my master's, life wasn't going so smooth for me, and actually my master's was like it was like a path out of what I was going through at the moment. And so obviously we had to make one of the master's applications, we had to make a proposal for it, and that was the proposal that I chose. I really can't remember. It must have been something that I was thinking about like from time before, and maybe just was like, okay, I had a list of it and I chose that one. And then in terms of my like routine, in terms of like food and health, it's changed over the years. So when I became a vegan a vegetarian first in 2013, then like I told you, I wasn't so accustomed to how to take care of myself as a vegan. So I had to do an allergy test, a vegetarian, and take an allergy test and realize that certain foods were not for me. And then the like ever growing journey of taking better care of myself started. And then what happened? Last year what happened was everything was Gucci. Like around this time I was living La Vida Loca, everything was nice, I was having a grand old time, being young and free, all that stuff. And I was getting really, really, really heavy into astrology and doing charts for friends. And I was following transits more often. And Jupiter, the planet
transits meaning, sorry?
So transits means that, like, for instance, like where the planets are in the sky at any given moment, and what sign it's in. So for instance, right now, anytime Mercury is in retrograde, that's a transit.
Okay.
Anytime it's like Virgo season and the sun is in Virgo, that is a transit. So basically Jupiter, the planet of expansion, blessings, wisdom, travel, all of that, was in Sagittarius. I have a Sagittarius moon, Pluto, and Jupiter, and I have it in the 6th house. The 6th house is the house of routine, health, daily habits, service, work, and work environment. So me being the, new young baby astrologer that I am, I was like, okay, now we need to put everything into practice, because Jupiter can work in 2 ways. Everything it touches, it expands. So it means that if Jupiter is going through your 6th house and you're not taking care of yourself, that's going to expand. And it'll probably affect you in a way that is just over the top. And because my moon, my emotions, feelings, dreams are in that same sign, in that same house, Pluto, the planet of transformation, death, and rebirth and power, and actual Jupiter are all in that house, it would have been really peak if I did not listen to that advice and just do what I needed to do. So during that time, I was like, okay, you've been studying astrology. You want to make sure that you get all your work done for this MA degree show. So I started going to the gym every day. And it wasn't working because I was like, some days I just wouldn't want to go. So then I said, let me take it slowly and start building up. So what I started doing was that I got a personal trainer and I would go to the gym once a week, and I would go at like 7 a.m. and then I upped it to like twice a week, and I would go 7 a.m. twice a week. And then I was like, okay, if I'm going to the gym, that means I have to clean up my diet too. So even though I'm a vegan, it doesn't mean that you can't be a vegan and eat trash all day, every day. So I was like, if I'm going to go to the gym twice a week and I'm trying to clean up my routine and my health and my diet, then, okay, I'm going to the gym twice a week. That time I was drinking like 2 liters of water all before 9 a.m. Okay. I was having an ACV shot, honey. Skin was unclear. Everything was good, girl. Like, it was really just good. And because I was doing that, it made it easier for me to go to the studio every day, like, and get my work done, because I had gotten all of those things. All of those things were done by gym, showered, eaten by 9:30. And then I had my plan for what I was going to do. I would go to the studio, sit there all day and do. So it was just like clockwork, just doing it. And I still use that now. Like, I know specifically for myself, because of what my chart says, that routine that has flexibility and that builds over time is best for me, and that I can, it directly impacts the work that I do. So, yeah.
So, I think Olivia says, I love how Chiizii incorporates her culture and heritage into her work. I don't know that much about Igbo culture, but she teaches me a lot in a fun, creative way.
Oh, thank you.
That is lovely. So I also wanted to speak about language. Pardon? Oh, I thought you said something, sorry. Saying, so there's also a focus of...
Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, cool. I was saying there's also a focus on language in your work, specifically your native tongue. So as part of the Nibu collection, you created a piece called Afu, and that being the word for body. Am I pronouncing that correctly?
Afu, yeah.
So you wrote that this piece serves as an introduction to the language for body parts that will help guide further understanding of the rest of the collection. So, and then also you were talking about how art is a tool for teaching and learning, passing on and recording information. Mm-hmm. So we're going to speak about the politics of health and like the decolonizing of health. But I wanted to ask you about the significance of language in your life, but also in your work.
Okay. Language in my life is important. I don't speak Igbo fluently yet. Mm-hmm. I'm more of a receptive bilingual at the moment, so I can understand Igbo, but I don't speak it fluently yet. And making sure that Igbo is in my work is a way for me to force myself to like consistently use the language, practice it, and learn words that I don't already know. And then language is important in my life because in Igbo culture, like, Igbo was a very like proverbial, almost like hidden meaning, intentional language. So even when I think about like every single one of my names is Igbo. My mom didn't give, I think only one of my siblings has an English name and it's in honor of my grandmother, but the rest of us have just full, like, they didn't give us any English names, none. And every single name that we have is representative of the journey that my mom had while she was pregnant with us. So it's important for that reason, because it means something really, really heavy, and it speaks over somebody's life. It speaks over what they're meant to do and who they're meant to be. One of my middle names is Chibu, which means that my personal guide is my medicine or my healer. So language is important for me because there's some things in English that just, they don't hit. Like, it doesn't hit like that. You know what I mean? Like, it just doesn't hit. Yeah. So, you know what I'm saying? Like, So language is important for that reason, because I find Igbo to be like a very, obviously because it's associated with my family and culture, it's a very comforting language to me. And it makes me, whenever I hear it, I always feel like at home, even if I'm around like a stranger that I don't know and they end up speaking it, there's something about it that makes me feel like I'm around people I know, or people that I'm safe around, or something like that. And then, yeah, in terms of using it in my work, I know for myself that I haven't been diagnosed with anything, but the way that I learn and process things is very different from what's expected in the school system. It takes me a really long time to learn things, and I learn more by doing than by like seeing somebody do something. And I learn more by seeing. That's the second way that I learn the most by. So I figured it's not everybody that's going to read a dictionary. It's not everybody that's going to read an academic journal or text or even has access to that. So I might as well just make sure that the work is giving information and teaching things, because people are more likely to see work either in a gallery or a museum or on Instagram, because not everybody goes to a gallery. Not every. I don't even really like going to galleries like that, if I have to be honest. But that's a conversation for another day. But yeah, I put that in my work because I just think that I feel like the process of learning is extremely westernized, and it's so fucking dumb. Like, I don't know how else to say, but it's just so dumb that people think that everybody should go to school, or the only way that most people can learn is through reading a book. Some people don't have the capacity to sit and read like 10 pages and process that information and take it in. Some people will not read in English, don't understand English, and a lot of this information is written in Latin-based languages. What else? Like I said, some people see through visuals. Some people learn through experience. So if they learn something and it's tied to an experience that they had, then they're more likely to remember it. So if you go and you see my work at an exhibition or a show, and you're reading what the work is, there's a chance for you to remember that more, because you will associate what you learned with that day that you went to that show with your friend, and you ate such and such before you got to the show, and you guys had a get together after. You know what I mean? Like, that happens to me too. Sometimes I remember things or learn things because of the experience that I have with it, so it doesn't leave me. So yeah, that's the reason why it's important for me to put that in my work.
Yeah, I think it's really important that you talk about the metrics that are used to decide who is valuable and who isn't. And it's
So I
like
cannot describe how annoying it is. It's so annoying to me.
yeah, because it's like there's that, even when you're speaking about proverbs, there's like that phrase where it's like if you judge a fish on its ability I might be like
No,
putting
but
my
you're
own
right.
spin
Yeah,
on
if you
this, but if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, then it will live its whole life thinking it's stupid. And even when you speak about like in terms of your spirit, or as your cheese, you described it in Igbo culture, and it's that thing of if each of us have our own like purpose, we have our like individual reasons for what it is that we're here to do, you know, what with this life that we have. And so if you judge everyone on this very like narrow like metric, and it's that thing of caring for yourself has a lot to do with valuing yourself. And if in society you have to fight to prove that you are of value before you, so that you can live out your life as you live out your life, live out your purpose like freely, it's hard to do that if you're doing that in a society that's telling you that according to these things that we've designed and created, you're not valuable, kind of thing. So I think it's really important that you talk about the metrics that we use to measure ourselves. And I guess, again, that's why language is important, because when we find the language that isn't Western, because again, the language that is used in the West obviously aligns with these systems. So when we find our language that sits outside of that articulates things that don't exist in English, then we can begin to find metrics that value us as we are.
Yeah, or even do away with those metrics.
Yes, like, or even do away with them entirely. Yeah.
When I started doing Nibogu, and I started doing more research because I think for me, I like doing research first on like my specific history and my family's background. And when I started doing research on that, then I found out that my great aunt wrote a book on food culture and science in Nigeria that was published for a while, and she had a TV show. I had no idea, like,
Wow.
she had a TV show on this. And the more that I started like asking questions about, you know, who did what and who were related to in my family, I learned that we've had lawyers, artists, poets, nurses, doctors. One of my aunts is a textile designer. Like, there's so many. When I actually started looking now, it's like the metrics became even wider, to the point where it's like, well, you can actually just about do anything, because the people that you come from have all of these different specialisms and knowledge, and you know, they were all known to do different things. So yeah.
Do you see that, do you see that as you being connected to a lineage, like in the way of passing the baton on?
Yeah.
So for example, your great aunt that created the book on nutrition, and then you then as an artist, with using your own in your own way, communicating that message as well. Like, do you see that as?
Yeah. And
Yeah.
even like, so when I was writing the proposal, it was my mom that brought it up, because she was like, why does this sound so familiar to me? She was like, this is just reminding me of something. And then she remembered, because it's her aunt and my great aunt. So then she remembered, and she was the one who told me about it. So now I feel like, especially because sometimes even within your own culture, you like, because culture moves and because of colonization, you will start condemning things that are actually a part of where you come from, or you will not look at the importance. So obviously, coming from an Igbo Nigerian background, it is very it's amplified and pushed to be an engineer, a doctor, a lawyer, all of these things that are, you know, counted as guaranteed to bring in money and income and security. And then when you start looking back and you're like, well, hold on, this person did this, that person that did that, then you're like, okay, well, actually, those are not the only options that I have. And I'm actually carrying on a lot of, like you said, legacy and heritage that I have by doing these things.
So we have 1 minute remaining on this live, so I'm going to end it and then I'll start it again.
Okay.
See you in a bit.
See you.